We've got breaking news in the Sarah Palin Troopergate investigation. According to findings of the Alaska Legislative Council released just moments ago, Governor Palin, quote, abused her power in firing Alaska's public safety commissioner. The report concerns Sarah Palin's dismissal of Walt Monaghan. He was a former chief of police in Anchorage. He was Alaska's public safety commissioner. Palin allegedly fired him because he refused to fire a state trooper who was her former brother-in-law, with whom she was engaged in a sort of family feud. His name was Mike Wooten. The report found that Palin violated the state's Executive Branch Ethics Act, which says, quote, each public officer holds office as a public trust, and any effort to benefit a personal or financial interest through official action is a violation of that trust. This is breaking news. Let's go right now to Newsweek investigative correspondent Michael Isikoff, who joins us on the phone. Mr. Isikoff, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Rachel.
So here's what I understand thus far. The report says Palin abused her power, but it also says this, quote, Governor Palin's firing of Commissioner Monaghan was a proper and lawful exercise of her constitutional and statutory authority to hire and fire executive branch department heads. So it's an ethics violation, but also legal? How does this square?
Well, the ethics violation is not the decision to fire Monaghan. It's the pressure, according to the report by Steve Branchflower, the special counsel, it's the pressure that the governor, her husband, Todd Palin, and her top aides put on subordinates to get Mike Wooten, the state trooper who was her former brother-in-law, fired. That the finding by Mr. Branchflower is that this created impermissible pressure. Impermissible pressure was placed on subordinates to advance a personal agenda, the first personal agenda by the governor being to get Michael Wooten fired. I'm reading from the report now. And he goes on to say such impermissible and repeated contacts, that is the pressure that was put on subordinates to fire Wooten, create conflicts of interest for subordinate employees who must choose to either please a superior or run the risk of facing that superior's displeasure. So that's the violation. It wasn't the firing of Monaghan. It was the pressure that was put on him and others to can Mike Wooten.
And in terms of moving forward, that seems important from an evidence perspective, because the documentation of the pressure being applied to Monaghan is not in dispute. There are actual tape-recorded phone calls, and as far as I know, Todd Palin, the first dude, has admitted to having put pressure on Monaghan and on others around this issue. So, from an evidence perspective, they have not denied that they did put that pressure. They did exert that pressure, and if that exertion of pressure is itself the ethics violation, they have, in essence, already conceded the facts of the most serious allegation here.
Well, that's actually a very interesting point. Now, there are key evidentiary matters in dispute here. And in fact, Branchflower challenges the credibility of Todd Palin implicitly and the governor herself explicitly on some key issues. For instance, Sarah Palin has said repeatedly, Mike Wooten, the trooper who was in the ex-brother-in-law, was a threat to her and her family. They were worried about their safety. And then he points out in a very interesting passage that the governor had dismissed her own security detail shortly after she takes office and orders a substantial reduction in manpower in her protection detail in both Anchorage and Juneau, and pointing out that's kind of inconsistent. If they were really worried about their safety, why would she be dismissing her security detail? He also points out that, if anything, getting Wooten fired would have only increased the potential threat to her family. So he challenges the basis for what the governor has said was the reason she was so exercised about Mike Wooten.
Well, Mike, in terms of this ethics violation, is this a criminal matter? Is this a matter for which she could potentially be impeached? What sort of violation is an ethics violation in Alaska law?
Well, it is a violation of the law. It also could be a matter that the state legislature could take up as a basis for censure or theoretically impeachment. I'm not sure the votes would be there to do that in a Republican-controlled legislature, but it is certainly it is certainly a finding that could be the basis for further action. It is a state law, so there is potential liability there.
Mike Isikoff from Newsweek, thank you so much for joining us. I should say, investigative correspondent for Newsweek magazine. Your reporting has been really helpful to me in figuring this all out. Thanks a lot, Mike.
Okay, thank you.